Okay, this is Maps, Advice and Stories. I did the first one with Mr. Scruff about DJing and was really desperate to do one about A&R and really wanted to speak to our guest today, Ross Allen. Hi, Ross.
Yeah, not bad, Rob, not bad. No,
You're
no,
all
nice
right.
to see you again. How you
Good.
doing?
So we're just having a little chat earlier, and basically, I just want to. I mean, we've known each other for a long time. I was trying to think before we did this. I think we first met when you were doing the club section at Straight No Chaser, and I
Yeah,
was sending listings through the clubs, and then we ended up chatting, and then I ended up booking you to play in Brighton. I
yeah, the
think that's
ship.
how we met.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the ship.
and
Yeah,
Ship
yeah,
Street.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the jazz place on Ship Street. But
Yeah,
you've
that was a long time ago. That was probably 1992,
Yeah,
93,
early
something like that.
90s, mid
Yeah.
90s. And then we've just always been in touch ever since then. And for me, I've really followed your journey pre-doing True Thoughts. I saw you do, be involved in A&R and do Filter is probably my first
Yeah, no, I think
thing that
my
I saw you do.
first A&R thing was I got a job off the back of that club column at Straight No Chaser doing club promo at Dorado.
Ah,
So
right.
I
Okay.
started at Dorado. I was running a record shop in Streatham. Actually, before that, I did a little bit of record label work with Tongue and Groove, which was
Oh, yeah.
the precursor to Hospital
Yeah.
Records.
Is it?
Is
Was
it?
that, yeah,
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 and the whole acid jazz kind of thing.
yeah.
So I sort of got my foot in the door then, sorted out by Paul Bradshaw and Janine at Straight No Chaser. So I was writing for them and obviously deeply in that scene and doing a bit of DJing and whatnot with, probably not Giles at that point, but was in with Giles and Patrick and that whole sort of world, doing a lot of things in Southeast London, DJ wise, and then and then did a little stint at Tongue and Groove, which is more just sort of getting your foot in the door, record label wise, and then Ollie from Dorado got in touch, I think, and Paul Bradshaw was just like, "Look, Ross, you should go for this job. It'd be really good for you. He's a good guy and bloody bloody blah." So I started there doing club promo. And then I think, being the sort of person that I am and sort of excitable and into things as I was then, as I am now, I was just like, you know, ended up doing all manner of things, but also commissioning a few remixes. I got Ashley Beadle to do some stuff, and then Express 2 and Ballistic Brothers to remix D-Note. And then I just sort of got more and more into that side of it. I signed a band called APE to Dorado. And then eventually Ollie turned around and said, "Look, do you want, we want to give you your own label." Because my sort of stuff was more club based, electronic than what they were doing at Dorado, which was more sort of musician based. Still very fresh, Jaleesa Anderson, Outside D Note. I suppose they had Brooklyn Funk Essentials. So
Acid jazz scene was going on at that time quite strong,
exactly.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Sort of, and I suppose I was more aligned and leaning into what Mo Wax were doing, more beatsy, more hip hoppy, more clubby, techno, reflecting what I was playing when I was DJing. Do you know what I mean? So, and I suppose as ever, I've just kept finding things. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, so they gave me Filter. Well, they said have a label, and I set up Filter, which ran for a while, and we ended up signing Sunship, who obviously went on to do quite well on the UK garage thing, but he'd had links with Dorado because he'd been D-Note and he'd also done some tracks on Dorado. Me and Kerry got on really well, and we did some EPs. And then obviously he turned into the sort of UK garage sort of sensation. He got latched onto that. And who else did we sign? Underwolves, which was a drum and bass project, Ned Kelly and Professor Stretch, which I then signed on to Island later. I made an album with them.
DJ Q and the amalgamation of sounds as well,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Jean-Claude from If
yeah.
If Record, If Music. I think he was working at Catch a Groove then, and I was buying a lot of records off of him. And yeah, he did that first amalgamation of sounds thing. DJ Q was well, it was funny actually. That was an EP that I bought called East End Tracks, like East End of Glasgow. And it had on one side was Blue Boy, and on the other side was DJ Q. And I managed to get hold of DJ Q, wanted to get hold of Blue Boy, but DJ Q wouldn't give me his details. He just wanted me to do his stuff. So I was just like, all right, cool, fair enough. And then obviously Blue Boy went on to do Remember Me. But having said that, you know, the DJQ stuff was wicked. You know, it was
Yeah,
like, it was really like on that Carl Craigie.
yeah.
You know, at the time, I was spending a lot of time in Fat Cat and those sort of record shops, you know, and that whole techno fusing with beats and sort of, you know, that deeper Detroit kind of side, the artificial intelligence, you know, warp kind of vibe was something I was into, as well as old funk, soul, reggae, hip hop, US garage, you know, just, you know, I mean, I was a kid I think I got into that music when I was about 13 in about 1983 through the electro albums and just soul, electro, and then that was the journey into hip hop and house and everything else. And I've sort of been on it ever since. Do you know what I mean? Just broadening out the definition of what soul is. Do you know what I mean? You know,
From that
music.
e- from that era, as from an A&R point of view, so I guess it's your first job. I'd imagine in those early '90s time, I mean, vinyl was probably selling quite well. So did you have? Was there quite a constraint at all? Were you told you've got a budget, or was it just like speaking to people, you were giving them an advance, or it? You know, how was the practical thing of working with people then? Was it?
It's funny, really, because for sort of for something that's obviously so much of a concern now, for a long time, for a lot of the labels that I've done and that we will talk about, I assume, on this call, um, you know, I never really paid too much mind to the business side of things. Do you know what I mean? You know, I was, you know, Ollie was, you know, in a way, I mean, I had a bit of I mean, I'm friends with Ollie now, but we had a bit of a falling out from creative reasons. Um, but, you know, if I was being completely honest, um, I wish I stayed with Ollie and built a label, you know, much the same way, nothing but respect for what you've done with True Thoughts. Do you know what I mean? You know, but, and I remember going into Fat Cat, and when I got offered a job at Island, they were like, don't go and work for a major. And I was just like, well, I want to buy it. I want to get a house and, you know, and blah, 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 blah. And there was lots of positives that came out of working at Island as well, which we can get into, and a lot of downsides as well. But I think with hindsight and retrospect, doing it yourself as was then, and you know, yes, you could sell quite a lot of 12s and you could make money, you know, but cash is always tight at independent labels. Do you know what I mean? You know, and that restricts your options. You know, you can't sign everything. You know, when you're at a major, you have, you know, it's like, what, we need more music. We need more music. Right, that one's better than that one. Get rid of that and get this one. And, you know, there's a heavy, fast turnover of acts at those labels, which is something I think I sort of fell foul of when I was at those labels, because I sort of believed in them. Do you know what I mean? Where I think realistically, you know, at a major record label, the A&R person isn't meant to sort of believe in the act. The A&R person is meant to just sort of, you know, grab what's hot and ditch it when it's not, you know. I mean, it's funny, I remember talking to Arthur Baker not too long ago, actually, who I ended up running Arthur Baker's label, Minimal, which went through Dorado as well. Me and Arthur spent a lot of time together. And then I signed a band to Island that Arthur Baker managed. And you know, we're going to put a record out on my new label, Foundation, in the not too distant future. And we were sort of, you know, I always see Arthur. I always call him Uncle Arthur. He's just like sort of a, you know, a figure that I remember seeing him on the sofa at Dorado and I was just like, oh my God, that's
Yeah,
Arthur
legend. Yeah.
Baker, and it rock. And, you know, it was like, what? But he was lovely and very affable, and we've been friends ever since. And he turned around once and he was just like, you know, I was bitching about major labels, and he looked at me and he went, you was never going to run a major record label. And I took it a bit. I was like, what do you mean? I've found loads of things, you know. I'm like, I could. And he went, no, you're missing the point. He goes, it's a corporation. He goes, and you're not a company man. You're not a corporate man. You're too into the music. You're never going to last and be running one of those labels because you don't play that game. And I was like, yeah, probably. Do you know what I mean? You know, he's right. But you know, it's interesting. You know, that the pitfalls, as I'm sure you've seen, you know, of running a smaller label are limited budgets and not the opportunity to go, I want that one and I want that one and I want to do this, and you know, because that all comes at a sort of at a price. Do you know what I mean? You know,
So with Filter, which is your, I guess your proper first A&R job, was it? It seems like I'm just looking back on the catalogue, looking at Discogs, and I just remember at the time, because that was a time you'd get sent vinyl promos. It was, you'd always be. I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be on Filter,
Yeah.
but it was the the look of the label. I've got one here. Here we go. It was the sort of that look, wasn't it? And you just always knew it would be interesting to check it. Might be something
Yeah.
for me. It might not be, but it would
Yeah.
always be interesting. But so were you just on a production line of just like, I'm going to keep going? So there wasn't really a focus on, it was just about doing 12s or albums. There wasn't a
Yeah, I
pressure in a
think,
way of you've got to deliver certain acts or types of acts to just keep going. Or
yeah, I mean, in a way, the reason it was called Filter was because it was meant to be, we would get these acts and we would put them out cheaply, cheerfully, just do the vinyl, mail it out to DJs, maybe a bit of radio, although not really back then, and just get it in the shops and see if they bubbled up and turned into anything that could then go on to Dorado proper. Do you know what I mean? It was meant to be a filter label into Dorado to find some acts. So there was, I was never really aware of what the budget was, but I think it was like a small, yeah. In essence, one of the reasons I stopped working there was because, at the time you used to get advances from distributors to cash flow your thing. And we had that guy Kid Loop signed there, who was Charlie Lexton, Cool Breeze's brother. And I always thought he was all right, and it was quite good. But they really wanted us to do an album with Kid Loops, and I was a bit like, if we get it to a point where I think it's great, then we'll do it. And if we don't, then I don't want to put it out. And it never got to the point where I thought it was great and we should put it out. But Ollie had the constraint that he needed to put another album out to trigger something in the deal to give him money to continue. So, I remember I went to Japan with Ashley Beadle to DJ, and I was like, before I went, it was a bit like, he was like, you've got to put this album out. And I was like, I don't want to put it out. And he was like, you've got to do it. And then I was like, if you make me do it, then I'll leave. And then I remember getting a phone call in Japan in the middle of the night and just him going, we're going to put that album out. And then I was like, well, then I'm leaving. And that's why I left.
Okay, wow.
So,
So I guess in a way it's weird then, isn't it? Because you had a label that you built up, but ultimately, I'm not sure if it's pushed out, but through creative
it
differences,
was,
you didn't
yeah,
have the final say on what goes on there ultimately.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think if I look back at it in hindsight, I think one of the lessons I would say to anyone who's in the music business is, sometimes you got to suck these things up.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? And I think realistically, I was talking it's funny actually. I went out with my mum today to do some, just hanging out with her in London in the West End, went for some lunch and whatnot, and we were talking about stuff. And I think, you learn lessons in the music business, and I think one lesson that I would say to people is, particularly people who are impassioned about the music and who are, you know, principled, it's not really a place for principles. You know what I mean? I hate to say it because I think I am quite a principled person, but you close doors. And I think sometimes, and one record, if it's not quite what you want it to be, if it's going to lead you to further places, to other places, it's like, if I was talking to my younger self, I would turn around and go, you know what, Ross, this is a good spot. They
yeah.
love you. They're really into what you're doing. They're funding you to do your thing. Like,
Overall, you had a lot of creative freedom, didn't you?
yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
But I was,
yeah,
I was young and I was
yeah,
stroppy and I was like, principled, and
yeah,
I was like, that's not good enough to be on my label. I don't want it coming out on that, But at the time, you had, we were, there was Mo Wax doing its thing, and you knew where the bar was. They were,
yeah,
were doing the sickest records. Do you know what I mean? Well, they're doing drum and bass, and they got Crust and Pesce and Ronnie
yeah,
Size, and you've got this kid who, yeah, he was all right, but and a lot of people really loved it. But I think that's the other thing that I found out, when I've worked at Ninja Tune, I've been with, I remember turning around to Pete at Ninja once, and sort of there was you may remember him. There was an act there called Trevor Whatever.
yeah,
Who,
yeah,
and I, whatever. It's not everything's for everybody. Do you know what I mean? But I'd sort of listen to these records in, when I was at Ninja, and I was like, what is that? It's like, it's a bit nothing-y. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit sort of trip hop, beatsy, whatever. I mean, and I remember talking to Pete and just going, why'd you put Trevor Whatever records out? And he was like, well, he's Mr. Scruff's mate. And I was like, really? And that to me wasn't a bona fide reason to put it out. But then he was like, yeah, we got to sync with that in Albania. And 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 you never know where these records are going to land, really. Do you know what I mean? So I think my sort of slightly, you know, snotty
Yeah,
approach to it, and looking at Talking Loud, looking at Mo Wax, and and I love Ninja Tune, and it's put out some amazing records over the years. But there was a time when I thought Ninja Tune was a bit of a sort of, as much as I love Cold Cut and have made records with them and think they're brilliant, Ninja Tunes, sometimes it was like, oh my God, it's so brilliant, I love it. And other times it was a bit like, no, I don't know about that one. It's a bit below the mark. Do you know what I mean? But that's just me being snotty and having a taste. And I think that, it was back then, it was, and now, you just want to put out records that you really believe in,
yeah.
I
Oh,
think.
yeah, and I think that's interesting you say that, because I guess from my side, what I've learned, because sometimes when artists come with we've definitely done some albums which I wasn't sure about, and I've said to the artists, look, I'm not sure about this, but they've really wanted us to do it, and I've said, okay, let's just give it a shot, because I feel like if we've done a certain amount of albums with someone and they want us to try something, let's try it, because I think what I've seen over the years is, in a way, one album can't bring the label down. You just test it out, and then if it doesn't
Exactly.
work, but I can see. I think that maybe come with me being a bit older. I'm not sure that the 20-year-old me would have been able to do that, but I think because I started the label a little bit later, I was maybe just seeing a sort of a bigger picture further on into the label. That's probably 10 years into the label where those type of things were happening, that I could just be, well, we've got lots of other things going on, and let's just try things. So, but
No,
yeah,
no,
that's interesting.
and I noticed that when I was at Domino with Lawrence, who I've got nothing but respect for, and certain records he was like, there was records he was focused on, and there were other records it was just like, oh, just get it out. Do you know what I mean? It will do something somewhere. It'll sort of wash its face financially, and and you never know. You're not going to lose.
Yeah,
It's just like, look, it and I think you're right to be like that, particularly with acts that have done a few albums,
yeah.
because it's you've kept them on for a few records. They're obviously doing something, and I suppose it's a bit like like Marvin Gaye or Stevie Wonder talking to Berry Gordy and being like, yeah, we want to do, I don't know, what's going on or whatever, and it's a bit like, you don't really know necessarily what's around the corner. I don't know what artists you're talking about, but you've had some great people on the label,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think sometimes it is right to go, okay, cool, just
yeah.
on with it.
Even when that was the Bamboos, and they did a much slightly more. They were doing the sort of deep funk and heavy funk, and they did a more pop album. And I was saying, look, I'm not sure we'd be able to engage an audience with this. It was still a little bit funky, but it was more on the pop side. And he was just, look, just can you just give it a shot? And look, it didn't cost a lot of money, and we knew it was like, look,
How
we
did it
might as well
do?
do. It didn't. We didn't do. It didn't. Like, we didn't lose money on it, but it
Yeah,
was one of those things we learned from it, and I think it's one of those things that we've learned. I think one of the things sometimes that what I was able to do is just have that confidence to say, to look, I'm not sure this is right for us, and understand what to do. When Will Quantick really got into the cumbia stuff and the accordion stuff, I was saying to him, look, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what we'd be able to do. And he was just explaining the scene and what's going on there. And because he was so passionate, I know with Will, you can really just, it will do well eventually. And he did the Flowering
yeah.
Inferno project, which it took time. It took about 5 years for that to click in, but it streams crazily at the moment, some of those tracks. So I think we've learned over time. It's just like you said, it's just trust the artist sometimes, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I know for me, I almost feel if there's a big percentage of stuff, which there always is, that 80 or 90% of stuff that I'm excited about this and I can see why we're doing it. It doesn't matter too much if we've got those odd bits of, once a year or every couple of years.
No, totally. And I think that's the other thing. I mean, it's like, how many albums do you buy where you love every track on the
Yeah,
record?
that's it.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's one of those things where you're just like, well, look, overall, I think it's a great record, and I think it, and the fact is, the reality of this business is you never know where these records are going to land. Do you know what I mean? You just, you can have a good idea. I mean, with London Grammar, I was just like at one, until we got the mix done on it, I was a bit like, is this just like a crap version of Massive Attack? Is it more Chiba? I want it to be Massive Attack, And then we got the guy who mixed the Outcast record to mix it. And then I thought it really stepped up and became something that was, of its time. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to, I sort of had a bit of a eureka moment with the London Grammar record on a mix on one tune. And then that set the blueprint for the rest of it. But even when we first put it out, I didn't know what that was going to do. Do you know what I mean? You were just like, yeah, I think this is in a really good place now. And I think people are going to like it. And then we put Hey Now, which is the track that this guy worked. I mean, he'd done like 16 mixes of it. And I was like, nope. No. And make it more hip hop, make it more bassy, make it more, and then finally it came through one Saturday afternoon. I was sitting with Will LV and I was just like, and I was a bit stoned and we were just like, I was like, Will, I got to play it again. And he went, all right, okay. And I was like, no, let me play it again. He went, Ross, it sounds fine. I was like, it does, doesn't it? I was working with Jazz Summers, the sort of legendary, music manager who managed Wham and all those kind of people. And, the thought of ringing him up stoned and going, it's brilliant. And him going, it's a lot of old crap we talking. It was like, I need to know, but yeah, you never know until it goes out and people go, that's brilliant. We love it. And sometimes they don't say that's brilliant straight away. Sometimes it does, like you say, it takes a minute for it to connect,
Yeah. Well, so what happened after the filter situation then from an was that Ireland soon after that?
Yeah, I mean, after the filter, I mean, by this time I was on BBC London doing my sort of show 3 nights a week, so I was getting quite visible. Filter did a lot of stuff. It was I was in quite a nice position. Heavenly Records offered me a job. Left Field offered me a job to run their Hard Hands label. Pete Tong offered me a job at London. Wow. And then Ireland came in and offered me a label within Ireland and a full-time salary. And that was where I sort of had that dilemma of, do I go and work for a major? But I'd always wanted to sort of, I think underneath a lot of my sort of left of centre leanings, I quite like, when I say I like a pop record, I like a good quality pop. Yeah. I like the elements that make up big accessible records. And I thought if I go to one of those places and it being Ireland with the sense of Chris Blackwell and everything else, then I've got a shot at hopefully taking my leaning, which is black music, left of centre black music, and working with someone who's constantly broken left of centre amazing records.
And only a few years after sort of Massive Attack Soul to Soul did do that, isn't it? So it's quite a recent template of underground club.
Yeah. And obviously they had trickier islands.
Yeah.
And I think what they wanted, they thought I could come in. When we set Island Blue up, it was with a view to it being the Talking Loud Mowax of Ireland, and I mean, I remember going in there and I was quite naive at the time. That's one of the things I was talking to my mum about today. I was just like, I came from Southeast London, in Abbey Wood, and the thought of working in the music business when I was a kid, buying Groove Records or going to the WAG Club or doing any of this stuff, I was so infatuated with it and loved it so much. Never thought that it would be me that could do any of this stuff. It was like, well, that's what other people do. At my school, if I'd gone, I want to go and work in the music business, they'd be like, what? It was like, you either work on a building site, you go into the city, or you become a chartered surveyor or something. Do you know what I mean? It was all very,
I think that's where we've got a real similar thing, because we've sort of come in from no connections or anything like that, just loving music and then going in and making a way.
I did a degree and my mum was just like, what are you doing working in a record shop? I didn't pay for you to go to college to go and do that. And I was like, yeah, but, maybe I can, and she was just like, basically sort of disowned us for a while.
Yeah,
So
my mum, when they were chasing me up for my student loan, said my son's decided to be involved in the music business and he'll never have any money. There's no point in chasing him up, basically. So it's a weird concept for parents to see. And I was trying to explain to my mum, oh, look, you can do this. There are channels to earn a living without being pop stars and things like that. But
yeah, no, totally.
yeah,
But I think the thing is when you get into sort of the major labely type of stuff and the bigger world of the music business and around the scene that we've always been in, you do find a lot of people that are there whose parents were involved in it or were connected in some way. And it's one of the things I was saying to my mum today. I was like, she was like, you glad you went to university? And I was like, well, if I'd had someone around me who, like, you lot had not didn't, weren't anywhere near the music business, but I would have left school at 16 and gone and worked in a recording studio. I would have done that, if I knew what I know now. But, at the time, I was just like, there's no way that but just didn't think I would ever DJ in a club in the West End. Didn't think I would be an A&R person, definitely not being on the radio or any of that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just where you come from. Whereas a lot of other kids are like, oh yeah, go and do that. And, and you find out and he's, oh, his dad was in the Yardbirds and, oh, his dad used to manage Pink Floyd and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I remember someone turned around to me once, a president of a big record label, and they went, you've done really well, And I was like, oh, right, cheers. I thought I could have done better. And they were like, yeah, but from where you come from, it's amazing what you've done. I was like, thanks.
But it's a good tip. It's interesting you saying that because I look back sometimes when people are asking me what I love, because I was so desperate to buy records during holidays, I would just go, and I worked in a warehouse and delivering furniture because I wanted a pay packet so I could buy records. And I think in hindsight, what I should have done is just go to labels and say, I'll come work for you for free and just
Yeah.
be around, because ultimately that's where you learn. Like, in a way, that you getting into Dorado and then getting filtered because they saw your passion, wasn't it? It was almost that can be the thing that people could being around and finding someone who's passionate about music. And I see that with the people that we employ. You sometimes you get those people who come in who are like, oh, you're just into music, and you can be a real asset on that side of things for us at the label as
Yeah,
well. That
totally.
passion there.
Yeah, no. I think you're right, and I think in a way it's kind of as much as it sounded a bit patronizing when someone said you've done quite well, it is because you eat, sleep, and drink it. It's like I've just been writing up the little note for my radio show on NTS. That I post when I do my posting. Like I did the show last week, the third show of the year. I was sitting there and looking at the track list, and I had 4 hours of music of brand new stuff. Like, a couple of bits I'd missed from last year, a couple of bits from back in the day, but most of it was like, I never got to the drum and bass section. I never got to the footwork. I never got to all these different sections, but it was just like literally over the week from the week before, I'd just gone down into it and gone through, I'm listening to music. I mean, more than ever, my filtering system I use Spotify a lot to just filter stuff as well as the promos I get sent. I'm like literally any email that I sign up to, any mailing list, record shops, record labels, promo companies, whatever, magazines, and I'll sit there, and if I can and I've got time, I will go through the list and go, what's that? Don't know it. Put it in a January folder. Put that in a January folder. Put that in and I've got these folders each month run to like 1,000 tunes. Whatever comes along just gets chucked in there. A lot of them could be rubbish. A lot of them can be magical. And I try and go through that when I'm on the tube, when I've got 5 minutes, when I'm doing some work at home, put the playlist on. Oh, that one's good. Boom, that one. It's that filtering process that I've been, in different incarnations doing since I was a kid at school, spending my lunch money to buy 12-inch records out of our price.
And it's just the passion inside, isn't it? You can't buy it, can you? You can't
Listening to the
work on it. It's just
radio.
inside you.
Yeah, I mean, and in a way, for whatever sort of trials and tribulations this business has taken you through, and to be perfectly honest, I feel quite blessed with the journey that I've had. Do you know what I mean? But at times, especially more recently, running your own label, you're just like, well, what is going on here? This is a nightmare. Do you know what I mean? But it's, I wouldn't change it for the world, because I've spent all my life listening to records, and that's all I really want to do. I mean, I want to do a lot of other stuff, but finding new music is the magic to me. It's I love it.
Well, so one of the things, so just obviously you don't have to get into actual, real details about it. But when people ask me about, and I want to try and get a job as an A&R, and I always say, look, you had to set up a label to get, become an A&R. I'm curious. So, for example, with Filter, at the point where you just say I'm leaving, does that mean did you agree points, or were you were getting a wage, and then when you go,
No,
you
no,
don't
no.
get paid anymore? And then
Yeah.
what's the difference between that and then going to a major? How does it work? Is it just a basic wage?
Well, it's probably changed a lot since back then, but I mean, yeah, realistically, I mean, again, this was the whole thing. I didn't have a lawyer back then. I didn't, I just did Filter and was just like, oh yeah, wicked, this is cool. Um, you know, Great. You'll give me a record label. I can get paid to put records out. So I didn't have any points on any of those records or any of the artists I signed or anything like that, and didn't even really think about it. And then I went to Ireland, and they sort of trebled my salary, and I did have points on it, but none of the things I did at Ireland really made me any money from that. So yeah, I was just like, basically, snip, right, I'm off. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going. You'd built it up to a point, but it wasn't like, we were selling Portishead records or,
Yeah.
anything actually proper serious money. And I was just like, okay, right. And then and we'd only done short deals with the artists. So Box Saga came over to Ireland with us. The Underwolves came to Ireland with us. DJ Q got signed to Go Beat, so we couldn't take him with us. But then, once I got there, I was very aware that I'd been at a small indie. Again, very naively, I can remember they offered me a deal, and I was like, look, I don't know how to work at a major record label. I will take less money if you keep the heat off me and let me just do my thing. Which is such stupid to even think that. If anyone's out there listening, if you're dealing with a major record label, get the money. Get the money. That's all, because they will chew you up and spit you out. But to be fair, Ireland, as was back then, under Mark Moreau, and and with the people that were working there, was a kind of cool place. And I thought we had quite a good run with the acts that we signed at Ireland Blue.
Sort of show that, and again, you did the sort of house bag thing, and it was just a really fascinating label. And yeah.
It was. I think it was that thing. It was, it was when record labels and identities were important, and we had a budget, and they were really into me. I mean, the first thing I signed there, which I didn't sign there, was Talvin Singh. We did okay, made that record that won the Mercury Music Prize. That was a good start.
So that was you were involved in that. I only read that just the other day when I was just looking you up, and I had no idea you were involved in that as well.
Yeah. No, I was the A&R for that, and it was. I mean, A&R and Tal, he sort of just did it himself, really. Do you know what I mean? Himself on his own thing. We sorted remixes out and bits and pieces like that. But yeah, I mean, amazing talent back then. Sort of slightly think he never really fulfilled his potential, but I think he was quite happy just doing what he did. He ran the Mercury Music Prize, then he went off to India for like months to go and work with a tabla guru that he wanted to hang out with, and he was happy. The record label were like, where's the next one? Do you know what I mean? Sort of. But I mean, it was a great time. To be perfectly honest, I think I got there in 97. Between 97 and like 2000, 2001, those 4 years I was at Ireland full time and had Ireland Blue. It was magical, because I was on the radio 3 nights a week. I was doing, I ended up covering Giles on Radio 1 and a lot of other DJs on Radio 1. Early Six Music, I was doing a lot of shows on there.
I remember on Radio 1, you were the first person I heard play Red Astaire, Follow Me. And then, I was like, wow, that's you. You were the first person, when you
well, actually, I always think of that. I always think of that, playing that Red Astaire, because someone emailed in that night and was like, why are you playing this crap? Giles would never play this. And I was just like, well, he's not here. But it was quite, I mean, there's always someone thinks
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was funny you mentioned that. But it was yeah, it was all kind of coming to, I mean, I was like buzzing. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I was doing 3 nights a week on the radio. I won a Sony award for the radio show. The label, we had, who did we sign? We had Underwolves, we had Box Saga, we had Custom Blue, we had Spacek. We signed, we had Kirk DeGiorgio, we had, we had Global Communications, Tom Middleton, Mark Pritchard. All of these things were building this sort of like stable of great art, of great acts. And then, just as we were sort of moving forward with momentum, then Ireland got sold, Universal merged with Polygram, and Chris Blackwell left. And all of a sudden we had this whole new world order where me doing Talvin Singh, me building up all these kind of acts meant nothing to Lucy and Grange and the people that came in. They were just like, what's this? A backdrop to that was that around the same time, and again, something on a more macro level that I wasn't paying any attention to, was that sales fell off the edge of a cliff because you had Napster, and then you had the whole stream it, did download thing. And, it was a weird time. The 90s were like a glory time for the music business. CD sales, vinyl.
You could do a quadruple things like Pesce, couldn't you?
Yeah. I can't even believe I played Pesce. I mean, working with him was magical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I came up with an idea for that, sleeve.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great scene. And also, this was the one that was meant
to
come out.
Do you know where the idea for that comes from? That's Cecil Taylor unit structures on Blue Note.
Oh, right, okay.
And then an A&R'ed, the amazing artist that I got to know through Straight No Chaser, he did that thing of Pesce, and then we put it into that place. But yeah. I mean, that and I was also lucky because, again, the fallout of Universal and Polygram merging together meant that Mowax imploded. And I was there, I mean, I had to fly out to San Francisco and meet up with Shadow and talk to Shadow and go, look, mate, there's people at Ireland that know what you're all about. And I DJ'd with him. I didn't really know him that well, but I went and hung out with him, and he sort of humored me, and we spent an afternoon together. I mean, I subsequently went on to work with Shadow on a couple of records further down the line. But yeah, I got to pick up the acts on Mowax, which I thought were good and could do stuff, So that's where Pesce, I mean, Pesce was buzzing though, that time that, Mowax had put out
Miles from Home had come out in the 12th.
Yeah. And there was that wicked Trevor Jackson mix of it. And yeah, it was just like, right, well, we'll take that. I mean, it was brilliant, I mean, I love Pesce. I had such a laugh with him. I mean, I got a lot of time for James Lavelle as well, but I don't think Pesce and James Lavelle were the best sort of bedfellows, because I sort of sat with Pesce's two managers, and they were like, yeah, Paul's coming in a bit. And then Pesce walked in, and he kind of walked through the front door, and he went, if you're anything like that twat, James Lavelle, me and you have got a fucking problem. And I was just like, all right. How you doing? You all right? I'm a fan. I love what you've done. Yeah. Just, I mean, that, there was that funny attitude of drum and bass people around that sort of time.
I think I met because we did an album with Pesce, more sort of jazzy beats album, and when I was chatting with him and like what was going on behind the scenes, I think he's obviously mellowed down, and at that point, but I think at that point the album hadn't come out, so he was obviously a frustrated artist as well at that point, I guess.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I had such a good time with Pesce. He was absolutely, we had such a laugh. And yeah, I mean, he taught me so much about drum and bass. Do you know what I mean? He was like an original drum and bass head, from the rave days, and the sickest DJ, such a good drum and bass DJ, good DJ all around, a music lover. And yeah, I mean, I was sort of gifted that record. Do you know what I mean? It was great, and music made it their album of the month, and it did loads. So
yeah. So what what happened? So, I mean, like to me, that all that era, like that Underworld's tune Prima Redente was a massive anthem at the club nights we were doing it, Brian. It was like, you know, that was one of the tunes you put on and everybody would go nuts to as well. So for me, I mean, I'm in a pocket in, I guess, an underground DJ club scene, and I'm thinking, you know, what you're doing at the label seems brilliant. It's great that Pesce's albums come out, and then you're working with Chad. So what happens at the point where it feels from the outside it's going on, and you're saying at a macro level, the business is you know, in hindsight we see what was going on. It was that it. They just say we pull the plug on everything and that's the
Well,
end of it.
yeah, you know, the thing is that you're, you know, whatever you do in the music business, you're always sort of, you know, external forces are always at play. Whatever you do in life, you know, obviously, you know, I think Ireland, as was Ireland part of Polygram, the legacy of Chris Blackwell, you know, it was all like, yeah, well, you know, we put these mad left of centre records out and we stick with them and they build and they turn. You know, Lucian Grange came in, who was a pop guy who ran Polydor, who climbed his way up the tree within, you know, Polygram and was very hungry. I mean, he now runs Universal for the world. He's brilliant. I mean, you know, he's great. He's very funny, you know, but he was just like, I'm not into this crap. You know, like I don't give a shit about you being, you know, I think he actually hated Ireland because Ireland was super cool. And he was, you know, Ireland was really cool, but having a bit of a bad run. You know, it had, you know, Ireland's history ebbed and flowed all throughout. It was on a bit of a downturn. You know, if they had stuck with me, they would have been on an upturn. But I can fill you in with all the reasons why I say that. It sounds quite egotistical. But just the mindset that they had wasn't, it was just like, we're not into all this left of center crap. It doesn't sell any records. We're into pop. We want to do, you know, this, that, and the other. And he sort of, you know, and I was, you know, the writing was on the wall. I could see it. You know, he turned around and was just like, you know, Spacek, maybe, Talvin Singh. I'd drop Talvin Singh and I'd sign the Chemical Brothers, all the rest of your stuff. You know, we had this day when all of the A&R people at Ireland were made to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We all sat in the boardroom and he just annihilated everyone. You know, I mean, I just won the Mercury Music Prize. He looked at me and he went, what have you done? And I was like,
what? Oh God, that sounds like old school from a film or something like that.
oh, man. No, it was like hardcore, like, you know, rip everyone a new one. Do you know what I mean? You know, it was like, it's you know, it was, you sort of said, and you know, I just won the Mercury Music Prize. So I was like, well, I don't know. I signed Talvin Singh. He won the Mercury Music Prize. And he was like, are you proud of that? And I was like, well, yeah, I am a bit. Yeah. He went, I'd drop him tomorrow and sign the Chemical Brothers. He hadn't sold anything. Worst selling Mercury Music Prize act ever. I'll drop him. I was like, right, okay. But you know what? That is the reality of the music business. It's like when you start going up the food chain, it's like, are you selling records? They don't care what they're selling. You know, they don't care what they're selling. Distributors don't care what they're selling. You know, you care what you're selling. I care what I'm selling. You know, you're curating a portfolio of acts that, you know, that are close to your heart and you want the best for them. And you want to build and break these, you know, these people out as big as possible or do the right thing by them. When you get to that level, they're just like, you know, Lucian Grange now runs Universal. He was like that. Well, if I back Ross, I'm not going to go up the food chain. And these are the things that I never got. And in a way, I'm quite glad I didn't get them because that's not what I'm here to do it for. Do you know what I mean? You know, but it was to come back to that point that Arthur Baker made. You know, I would always argue the toss for the acts in the label, and everyone was just a bit like, well, you know, all the marketing people just want to jump on whatever the next best and the next biggest thing is and turn that into, you know, and because that makes them look good. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's not many people that actually constantly find really good things. The annoying thing was that, you know, the regime changed at Ireland. The new guy came in, you know, I remember because of the radio show, I played a Moses track on the radio show and spoke to Carol Crabtree and then found out about 07 and their album. So I tried to sign that record and I could have signed. I could have signed that to Ireland, and but look, I played it to Lucian Grange, and he turned around and he went, "There's no hit singles on it. Go back and tell them to write some hit singles, and we'll sign it." And I was like, "It's not that sort of thing. It's an album project." He went, "Not interested. Go and tell them to. If you don't tell them to go and write some hit singles, I'm not signing it." And I was like, "But knowing Sam and Henry, they're not going to have that. So that's not going to work." And then I got into the whole grime thing, and I, through my mate Nick, who was at school with me, he was the first, he's Cage, who produced Creeper with Weed. And, we were hanging out, and we were hanging out with Matthew Herbert in the studio in Greenwich, and over the road was Wiley, and who's the bloke who runs Rinse?
Genius.
Genius, yeah. There was Genius, Wiley, and then a whole gang of them. And through some link, Nick got close to them, and I got into it, and we made this record, Champagne Dance by Pay As You Go Cartel, in the basement at Ireland. And I sort of turned around to, my new boss and was like,
"So you were involved in that?"
I made that record, yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't realise that. Okay, wow. All right.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to fight today. You can find out. I didn't do that. I should have done that. If I had done, I would be a legend. Because there's some really good, it was all gravy up until this point. It was all brilliant, and I was like the golden boy at Ireland, and I'd won the radio show, Mercury Music. It was all good. It was brilliant. And then come the millennium, just after, Ireland merged. BBC London got sort of like turned into a talk radio station, and they were moving again, external macro pressures. They were turning BBC London into a talk radio station and taking all the staff and putting them into Six Music. That was where Six Music, kind of the core of it, came from, was BBC London. So yeah, around this time, it all sort of came crashing to a sort of a bit of a, not a disaster, but a weird sort of place, And I mean, they put Ireland Blue on hold. They were like, we don't want anything coming out on a subsidiary. We want everything to come out on Ireland proper. So they sort of shelved it, and I was like, well, look, you know what? If you're not giving me my label, then I just want to be there to work the acts that I've got. And normally when you go to being a consultant, you're there for 6 months and then you're out the door. 17 years later, I left Ireland. So I stayed as a consultant.
Okay, wow.
At Ireland for 17
years. Oh, right.
I think realistically, I was the person who sort of could get cool remixes done of all these projects.
Yeah, because you did the Amy Winehouse Frank ones, didn't you?
Yeah. And I did. I mean, I've Mary J. Blige, which we got Grammy nominated for, and Erykah Badu remixes, and Common remixes, and what's that?
That's Amy Winehouse, Seiji, and MJ Cole.
Yeah, I did all them.
Yeah. I mean, classic remixes, aren't they? So
yeah. No. It was so, but then at the same time, I went off. I mean, it was really annoying. Do you know what I mean? I then went off and formed Casual Records with the people who ran the club Cargo.
Yeah.
And that was where we did
like that, Lady Sovereign and Medicine. There was a few.
Yeah, Medicine. Yeah. We've got more of. I like it. But in essence, coming back to the Champagne Dance thing, we made that record in the Fallout Shelter. This new guy had come over, a guy called Nick Gatfield. He'd just been in LA. He was more of a rock guy. I think he was very involved with Radiohead, and he'd been working in the States, came back. I'm on this totally fresh new sound that's coming out of East London, stumbled on it by chance. I liked the techno feel of Wiley's Esky beats. It was like this weird Southern hip hop meets techno kind of thing. And, we made Champagne Dance, and we went to my new boss, and I was like, look, I've got this record, I think it's pretty cool. No, I don't want to put it out. We just made it downstairs. We just put it out. That's ours, No, I don't want to do it. So me and Nick Detnan, well, more Nick, Nick was like, well, I'm going to take it to Sony. So I was like, all right, cool. So we signed it to Sony and it went to number 12 in the charts. And then in the A&R meeting that week, my boss was like, that record, that Champagne, that Pay As You Go Cartel record, that went to number 12, didn't it? And I was like, yeah. He went, I want to do the album. And I was like, yeah, but we just signed it to Sony. Yeah, you need to find a way to get it out of there and get it back. And I was like, right. I said, that's not going to be possible. You blanked it. So, it's on you, mate. I said, however, because, I'm deep, because you're not a fleeting A&R guy, because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are in it, and I loved Wiley and I loved Danny Weed and I'd met Dizzy and I'd met Breeze and Flo Dan and, and I'd hung out with Jamaica B and all of them. Do you know what I mean? I was like, what is this? This is a nuts little scene. And I loved, I was playing all those records on the radio. I turned around to him and I was just like, look, as it stands, Maxwell D is leaving, it's all breaking up, like Pay As You Go Cartel isn't a thing. But what there is in there is Wiley, who wants to do his own record. There is, what are they called? Roll Deep. And there's this kid, Dizzy Rascal. And, we can take the cream of that and run with that. So,
And this is pre-XL, isn't it? Signing, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can tell you
yeah.
exactly how Dizzy Rascal got to Excel when I tell this story. Basically, I had all the music. Nick came in. Nick Denton, a very kind of, I've known him since I was 6. He's a very intelligent guy, like locked in with them lot. And we came up with a deal to sign all 3 of them. We put a deal on the table to sign Dizzy, Wiley, and Roll Deep, 350 grand for the lot. And I was like, wicked, this is great. This is like, they were, to me, Dizzy was the freshest person I'd heard since the London Posse, like Cockney Ragga, in a different incarnation.
Yeah.
I Love You. I was the first person to play I Love You on the radio.
Yeah, you've got
Like,
a dub player for that as well, haven't you?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was playing, I had all, when I was on BBC London, I had all of those records. They would give them to me, they would give them to Slimsy, and they would give them to Daddy Ernie on LWR or whatever, or Choice or whatever he was on,
Because
We would get,
he was letting them use his studio as well, wasn't he? Daddy
I
Ernie
think,
and Nick
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It
Took
was,
him on
like
too.
East London kind of link. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I was like, in the thick of that. And then I don't know, my boss turned around and went, yeah, well, we're only going to give him 250 grand. And I was like, this is going the wrong way. This music is going like that. Your deal is going like that. No one's going to be happy when you wipe 100 grand off a deal. And then it just got worse. And it was like, look, you can only sign one of them. I was like, let me sign Dizzy. No one's ever heard of him. I was like, yeah, but it's like, let me sign Dizzy. If you're doing one, let me just sign Dizzy. And in the end, he turned around and was like, what was it? What was that record? Oh, the Body Groove. Some garage record went in the charts. That didn't get in the top 20. UK garage is over. We're not signing Dizzy. And I was like, he's nothing to do with UK garage. It's a whole new thing. No, we're not signing him. I remember we were driving past I was in the car with my old girlfriend and a guy that I ended up running Casual Records with. We were driving past the Albert Hall and I just lost it. And I was like, you're a... And they were like, who are you talking to? I was like, oh, my boss at Ireland. And we weren't allowed to do it. And my mate, Tony Farsides, who, I'd been playing Dizzy to anyone and everyone because I just thought it was the best thing ever. And my mate, Tony, turned around to Nick Huggett, who was at Ireland, and went, oi, Nick, you want to get on this Dizzy Rascal kid? Ross isn't allowed to sign it, but he's amazing. And Nick went in, talked to Detnan, and that he signed Wiley and Dizzy.
And I mean, it's not, so in a way, from an
It's the most gutting thing ever,
yeah,
from an A&R perspective.
yeah, that's what I mean. It's like a real, and I guess in a way, that's the bit, isn't it? It's a bit. unless you've got the credit of having the hits and the hits and hits, and maybe even that's not the case. Even if you had a success, you still may not have even been able to sign that. But without it, it's almost impossible to work those angles. Is it a major? Is that what you feel? Although Nick, I guess, maybe did it, but I don't
Well,
know.
but XL is
Okay,
you
indie,
know, and
yeah,
Richard
makes all the
Russell
difference. Yeah,
is,
yeah,
you know, is
yeah.
completely from that world. So
Yeah,
they
he
were
would
just,
understand what's going on there, wouldn't he, from the
what is
ground
this?
up? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you know, it was like, you know, that if for someone like me or you
yeah,
need to be in one of those labels. Do you know what I mean? You know, but then there's pitfalls to those things as well.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, XL is the island records of the 90s and the 2000s. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's got that thing, and you know, fair play to Richard Russell. He's, you know, he's got his taste, and he's not afraid to do an Adele. You know, he's just it's been a brilliant label in our lifetime. It's been the island of what Ireland was in the 70s and the 80s. Do you know what I mean? XL has been that label. Um, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, that's the downside of being at a major record label. Like, you know, is the fact that everything's there and you can't do it. But then I had a run of it. I had it with Arcade Fire, I had it with MIA, I had it with loads of them, you know, and you know, and it was just doing my head in. I mean, you know, we also had success because off the back of that, I was like, went off and set up Casual Records, where we said, you know, I mean, I'm forgetting, to be honest, that my biggest success, um, which was I sorted out Freak Like Me for the Sugar Babes.
oh yeah, yeah, the number one, isn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So that was
yeah,
number one all over Europe, and that
yeah,
completely reinvented that band.
yeah.
But you know, that was me. That was that whole mashup culture. Me buying the Girls on Top record in Rough Trade and bringing it back, and going, we should sign this. This is brilliant. And then, to be fair to my boss, he was like, no, we should get the Sugar Babes to rip it off. And then I was like, no, 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 don't get the Sugar Babes to rip it off. Get Richard X, who I've spoken to already, to produce it because he's a producer. And that kickstarted his production career, as he very graciously always tells me when I see him. He's like,
Was he behind the bootleg as well?
yeah, Richard
Yeah,
X was
he was
Richard
behind
X,
the bootleg. Yeah, yeah,
Girls on Top thing. Yeah.
yeah,
So it was, yeah, I mean, it's like anything in life. Do you know what I mean? You know, you get lucky, then
yeah,
things are unlucky. And if you're in it for a long time, and I've been, I mean, this is probably my 30th year, 31st year of doing A&R. So I've been doing it a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, you've got to get. I guess with me, whenever I feel, oh, you know, there's something I really want to sign, and for one reason or other, you can't sign it. I'm always quite philosophical about it, just being, well, it just wasn't meant to happen, but other things have happened, and you just got to be grateful, and you just move forward. With you, I mean, there are a lot of big things there that you miss out. I mean, I haven't got a list like that. I mean, I guess you have to learn to cope with it, but it must. I guess it's extra frustrating compared to the job that I have as an indie, because they're those things. They're almost the dream goals as an A&R person, aren't they? Those things that are credible but can cross over, aren't they? That's, to me,
Yeah.
that feels like the dream
Yeah.
signing, that you get something that is, this is so credible, but you know, my mum might like it, or my, you know, my sister might like it, and
No,
my
totally.
nieces
Yeah,
and
yeah,
nephews might
yeah.
like it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
They're the records that I really want to make. And I
yeah,
think that the way that I've always wanted to make, you know, I want to be signing Massive Attack. I want to be signing, you know, I'd love to sign Salt, you know, whatever, those kind of things. Do you know what I mean? You know, where you know, there's some records that are leaps and bounds above everything else that comes out. And, you know, I think you know, I've got an ear for finding those things. Do you know what I mean? You know, and it hasn't left me as of
yeah,
yet. Um, you know, and I think I've got much better at making records with people. You know, I've always been quite hard on acts. You know, I used to have, you know, with Spacek, I was always like, yeah, the album's brilliant, but we haven't got any singles. You know, like, and it is that thing. I think the terrain changes when you go into a major record label, and you know, and in a way, I'm as much as it was painful, you know, I'm sort of quite grateful for the sort of the grief that Lucian Grange gave us, because it's like, this is the, you know, this is what now enables me to make the records that I'm making now, is because you know, I think you go from sort of just signing whatever you like and be, when I first joined Ireland, my old boss I was like, well, what do I do? And he went, just do A&R. And I was like, what's A&R? And he went, just sign what you like. And I was like, okay, cool. That was great in one regard, but that isn't what the job is. To me, the job of A&R is, to use it. I don't know. It's to help the act grow and develop, and to help the act be as successful as they want to be, and also to be able to see some acts don't want to be successful. Some acts just want to be cool. And I think it's the ability and, the conversations you have before you start doing the job are the conversations where you work out whether you want to be working with these people. Oftentimes, and I think I'm doing quite a bit of management now as well, because I think that's an extension of A&R. We can get round to this a bit later, but to me, it's an extension of A&R because they don't do A&R at major record labels. So if you want to do A&R and you want to develop acts, you've got to do it yourself, and you've got to put records out. And that's why I've got Foundation now. And that's why it's called Foundation, is because when we found London Grammar and we developed that, we were lucky enough to be able to develop that in the main at Ministry of Sound with them. We'd done a bit of development, but now, no one at a major record label, you can't go in with a demo and go, hi, I got this, do you want to sign it? We'd laugh you out the building. You have to go in with a proven, they're only going to sign it when it's doing 6 million streams a month. They're not interested. The terrain has changed completely, but the job hasn't realistically. If you're at a major record label and you're an A&R man or A&R person now, and I no disrespect to anyone who is actually making the records, and I'm sure, and I know there are people there that are doing that, but a lot of the time the A&R department is just data driven, and they're looking at whatever trends come along, and when something is popping and doing numbers, they wade in, they get out the checkbook, and bosh, they get it. But in a way, that's what they've always done.
Yeah,
it's just more blatant now and more data driven.
We had a sample clearance recently at a major, and it was fascinating seeing what was going on with it, because it was TikTok driven, the signing. And then by the time we'd agreed and cleared everything, and they were like, oh, yeah, the numbers aren't that good. And they were just looking on TikTok, and it was like, oh, you can see they're just going to pull this in a way because the numbers at TikTok level weren't enough. And it was a fascinating thing to see from the outside. And it was just a sample clearance for us because, yeah, if it does go viral, it's like, okay, well, this could get in the pop charts and that could be good for that artist. But it's so, after a week, no, that's the end of it almost. And you can see the people we're speaking to, it's like, well, they've almost got a pressure. I was speaking to someone who works in that environment, just saying, well, everyone's under so much pressure there to deliver, and they are looking at TikTok and they are trying to do numbers. And in a way, what you've been doing and what you're trying to do is, when you're trying to explain there's a scene going on here that, like, historically in the UK as well, we know there are these scenes that bubble and become dubstep and grime and jungle, and we've always done them. And the majors used to come in there, didn't they, and do that. I guess that's my worry. Sometimes I wonder, well, maybe they don't do that anymore, but maybe that's our job, and your job still is to be that person. And yeah,
I think the thing is, I think the reality of the situation is that, there was a time when they wanted to do that, and then there was a time, and they did do that, maybe the indies did it better, but then there was a time, then there was a time when, it was prohibitive for major record labels to develop artists, because if you was on an indie, you get everything cheap and you can do it. As soon as you hear a major label, you're like, right, double, we're going to get paid properly now. Yeah. So it became very expensive for them. But yeah, I think around that time it was just changing, and I think that there wasn't a lot of money sloshing around because the Napsters, it just fell off a cliff face. Yeah, CD sales fell. It all, in the industry. I think there was a thing Lucian Grange turned around. He went to some conference in LA or something, and he just turned all the lights out and he went, everyone's got AIDS, we're all going to die. It's just who lasts the longest, But obviously that's now changed around with streaming, and they're doing better than they ever have done. But I think, there's always been a lot of waste within the music business. and a lot of people blagging it, and a lot of, I mean, the thing is now, I mean, I've got mates who are running Republic Records in the States, and I was living in America around 2019, and you know, I'd go and see my mate there, and he would just turn around to me and he went, I don't know what a hit record is. He goes, I know what a great record is. I couldn't tell you if it's going to be a hit. I mean, I think the industry is in a bit of, particularly in the UK, is in a bit of a crisis, because I don't think people are really genuinely breaking records. And the model that was when there was vinyl sales, meaningful vinyl sales, not to say that there aren't vinyl sales now, because there are, but, there was a business model that was tried and tested. You would sign, say you would sign 20 acts a year, and one of them would go on to be a big act. Some of them would do nothing, and the ones in the middle would do something, and they would do enough to keep going. And maybe they would do enough to do another album, and then maybe on the third album they would break out. And they're, whereas now nothing's really breaking or making money out of, in the UK, really. I mean, people like Ed Sheeran and Dua Lipa and those kind of people, not they're people that we're that necessarily fussed about. But the reason we should be fussed about it is because there's an ecosystem. And when those acts broke 10, 12 years ago, it's just like, I mean, I'm, at the moment with my label and not having a huge catalogue, we've got Lady Blackbird. She's done just under 100,000 records. We had to sell her onto a BMG because we didn't have the money. I spent a lot of money on her record, and we got to the point where we were just, they came in, gave us our money back, gave us a bit more. We could find some other projects to work on and develop and keep the label going. But, it's difficult because there's just
the numbers are really hard at the moment at indie level, aren't they? And I think that's what we're seeing with the newer artists that we're signing. I'm trying to explain to them and say, look, normally when we get this type of buzz and this type of support on you, we would have normally sold 1,000 or a couple of thousand vinyl, 1,000 or at least a couple of thousand CDs, and you'd have made 5-6 grand. You probably have there was a gigging system that you would probably be able to go, and all of that's gone. And I mean, I don't know what to say to them, because it's like, look, you've just got to try and hang on in there, and we try and keep things going and keep within budgets. But it feels like this that ecosystem has gone. I remember when I first started True Thoughts in '99, and I was speaking to Mark Wright, Grand Central, and Sav at Euphonic, and he was like, oh, we can't, we used to be able to sell 100,000 records on an, indie. Why are you doing a label now? And I was like, well, we just know everyone's going to download it, but we felt we could maybe sell 5,000 CDs, but Bonobo went on to sell 20,000 CDs. So we were able to just financially have some money there to invest. But from an A&R point of view, where that pressure can be about signing something that, is it about finances, or how long term does it have to be? I guess maybe
I think
now, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it depends where you are. Do you know what I mean? At major, they're like, they need a short-term return. They're like, they'll pick you up and they'll drop you, and if they don't think it's going to work. And in a way, that's why I think they've all gone, you know what, we can't do this, leave it. Let's let them develop in the indie world. If they bubble up and we think they're good and the numbers look good, we'll wade in with a fat checkbook and we'll get them, and we'll take them from 70 to 90. Do you know what I mean? That's really how major record labels work. The islands of this world, were probably, I mean, even like an XL now, XL are probably taking people from 30 to 90 to 100 if it's an Adele. Do you know what I mean? With Adele, it's probably naught to that. They signed her when, she was doing nothing, just off a CDR. Do you know what I mean? But I think those things are a lot harder to do now, and it's for a myriad of reasons. But yeah, it's basically it kind of, it was, going back to the sort of the chronology, it got quite tricky at Ireland, and that was when, and I just got fed up with like all this stuff being knocked back, and you'd be like, well, I remember Brick talking about, I was like, you've got to sign MIA. Look what Dizzy's done. You've got to sign MIA. She's only got one single. That was when Galang was out, and then there was Sun Showers and whatever. And then I remember when the album came out in the A&R meeting, and this bloke who was right, he's obviously pointed at me. He was like, look at that MIA record. What a disaster. Do you know what I mean? What an absolute disaster. And then 6 months later, she had Paper Planes that was in the film. Slumdog Millionaire or whatever it was, and she was number 2 in the American charts. And I was like, "Oh, do you meant to see this? Number 2 in the American charts now." "Oh yeah, yeah, whatever, you know." I mean, I had the same thing. I was, I then went off and set up my casual record label and did Lady Sovereign, and then did my Country Got Soul stuff. And I ended up spending a lot of time in Nashville. Went to a brilliant record shop in Nashville.
I just want to show all the things because yeah, that's amazing. When that came out, that was so good. So
Yeah, it's good, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's great. That was great. That all came from the Underwolves, actually. But I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I was in this record shop in Nashville, and I was digging for old records, and they played Arcade Fire, the first CD, and I was like, "It sounds like Talking Heads. This is wicked." And I went up to the guy, and I was like, "What's this?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm glad you're in." This guy Mike Grimes, who runs Grimey's in Nashville, brilliant. Could have been a brilliant A&R guy. Runs a brilliant store in Nashville. And he was just like, yeah, no, he didn't know me, but he was just like, "Yeah, this album's like amazing, like it's so good you picked up on it. It's just come in, it's on Merge in Canada." And then I came back from Nashville, and one of the other A&R guys, a guy called Stephen Bass, was like, "Did you get anything?" And I was like, "Have you heard this Arcade Fire thing? It's nuts." And he was like, "Have you got the CD?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And he went, "You can't get it anywhere, And I was just like, "Well, he went, we're like, you got to play it in the A&R meeting." I was like, "Well, I was going to anyway." So I played it in the A&R meeting to this guy, and he just turned around and he went, "It's not going to sell a million records, is it?"
Can I just ask about an A&R meeting? So how's that done then at Majors? Is that like once a week and fixed times that everybody pitches?
I mean,
And is it
I
is
mean,
it all the different people all together, or do you get an individual?
no, no, no. They may well all be very different, but I think the general way that A&R meetings used to work. I don't know how they work now, but they were that thing. All the A&R people would come together.
How
You would
many
have,
people would that be?
I think at Ireland we normally had like 6 or 7
Okay,
people,
so
and
not loads. Yeah,
you'd have scouts. You have a couple of scouts. An A&R assistants, and everyone would sit there and they would talk about the acts that you have, the records that you're making. You'd play bits of the music that you were working and developing if it was right to do so. And then you would have all the new bits that you were into. And people would go, "Yeah, we like that. No, we don't like that. No, not interested. No, blah, 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 blah." You know. And then, records would go on lists, and we would sort of watch certain people. Yeah, go and find out about them, blah, 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 whatever. So, basically Arcade Fire got blanked in this meeting. And then about 6 months later, I was walking up the corridor at Ireland, and I heard Ferdy, who used to run Columbia, was a budding A&R guy who'd run Go Beat, signed Portishead, walking up the corridor with this guy and with this kid, Stephen Bass, who was the one who said, "Yeah, we should play it." And they were all talking, "Right, what we'll do, we'll meet with Bono, we'll go to Germany, and then we'll go to New York." And and I was like, "What are you talking about? You're talking about Arcade Fire?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I went, "I played you that 6 months ago and you blanked it." "Oh, yeah, 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 whatever, whatever." Because where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah. So I guess from that. So is there a with that, is there one person who ultimately makes this decision in that A&R meeting, but or is it one of those things you can get something across even if 5 people are going no and you're into something, you
Yeah,
can
I mean,
still
yeah,
get
I mean,
something,
I
or do you
mean,
need 4 people to be like, "Oh no, I think that's worth doing," or
well, I think at the end of the day, there's the head of the label, the president of the label, whatever term he chose to call himself. And it's down to him.
okay, so
If you
they will
like it and everyone else thinks it's crap and he thinks you're the golden boy, then
you will go through. Yeah,
he's just as likely to sign it off you
yeah,
doing it. But if there's a general consensus of everyone going, "Yeah, this is amazing," and everyone's got their other, that's the thing. You've got all these different A&R people, and they've all got their own worlds they operate in. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, you'll have someone who's probably an indie kid and someone who, I don't know, whatever, like we'd have, someone who was much more of a R&B soul person, and you'd have all these different characters, and, they would mine different fields to sort of bring music in.
yeah.
That was Ireland, which was sort of nearly a major. So they wanted the new black music. They wanted my left of center thing. I would often be on the soul and the black stuff, as well as, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Do you know what I mean?
It's an interesting melting pot going on,
Yeah, I
really.
mean, I've been some brilliant meetings where, people have bought. I remember a scout bringing in Badly Drawn Boy, and the A&R guy and this scout going, "Yeah, I've got it, brilliant, brilliant," and they're putting it on the turntable, and the head of the label took it off the turntable and slung it across the room. Was like, "Don't play me this crap." And then 6 months later, he was talking to the scout, going, "Can you introduce me to him?" It's like, it's no, the thing is, you know, no one knows everything
Yeah,
all the
it's
time.
always, the one you miss or this, that, or the other. It can be hard because I mean, I guess, we'd be living mansions in swimming pools if we really, really knew, and no one really does. There's such an element of luck in all of this stuff, I guess, isn't there, with what you
Yeah.
do?
No,
Uh,
totally, totally. And I think, that's why A&R people have a short lifespan. And, someone will be in a scene and they'll be, and everyone will be like, they're right at the epicenter. They can get me these people. And then that, we've watched it all,
yeah.
coming, from trip hop to jungle to house to garage to grime to dubstep to blah, 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 all that. It's just like, you see it. These things come in, and people are in the middle of it, and then in a way, I think being a sort of more of a journeyman, longer term sort of person has been fueled by the musics that we're into. We're into a bit of everything. Do you know what I mean?
And you've shown it is possible to do it, as much as there can be frustrations. There's really good things that go on, and there's a way to sort of balance that, aren't there? And you've done it in a really. I had no idea you were 17 years to consulting like that as well. So that's a long time to you know deal with that
I
world
mean,
as well. So,
no,
yeah,
part of me thinks that I'm like sort of proud that they didn't get rid of me.
yeah.
Half of it thinks I was a bit of an idiot because I could have gone and worked at somewhere like Excel and just put all my efforts into that. But what I did do was I went and set up this Casual Records, and signed Lady Sovereign, Medicine, did some stuff with Sunship, and then we did the Country Got Soul albums. But at around that time as well was when I
So what time was that? What years was that going on? That's the 2000s, was it? Is that
Yeah,
right?
that was probably 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
So the grimy thing had come and gone. And then I was doing my night at Cargo, which was a monthly thing. And then Chris Green was like, why don't we do a label? And I just had the number one with the Sugar Babes. So that was sort of riding high. And then we did and then yeah, and then we Medicine would, Gabriel Prokofiev, Prokofiev's grandson was a kid that I got introduced to, and I like what he did. And then Lady Sovereign came out of that. But at the same time, that was when I was hanging out with Sinden and Switch and Diplo, and all of that was another thing that was coming through that I got really excited about. That sort of, you know, again, fresh, new school black music from the ghettos around the world. Do you know what I mean? I always remember hearing Baruch Some System and being like, what? And that was when MIA was around, and and that was a whole nother world of like, oh my God, this music's amazing. I mean, I tried to sign Switch to Ireland, and Switch did a lot of Jack in house things, and he would play, we had a meeting, and he came in, and he would play a beat, and it was a minute long intro because it was a club track. And my boss at the time at Ireland would just go, yeah, anyway, yeah, that's nice. What's the next one? And I'm like, no, it hasn't started yet. They just used to, and then you go on to the next one, and it's like, oh, okay, right. A minute in, flick it onto them. I'm like, no, you're not listening to them properly. Like, they're club tracks. You've got to sit with them and listen to where they go. And where they go is amazing. And it was just like, oh, it's a waste of time. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, and I was still hanging out with a lot of them that, Roll Deep and, all of those guys. They were never fans of Lady Sovereign. I mean, that was one of the times when we sort of found her, signed her off her own back. We got, artwork, and I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that project that Artwork did with uh it was they used to call themselves Moto Blanco, but they did this project called Mentor. Do you remember that
Oh,
record?
yeah.
Sounds of the Future. It's absolutely brilliant. Before dubstep, there was that sort of
Yeah.
sound that was that UK garage, with like 138 Trek that you know, Zinc and that were doing,
Yeah.
you know, those sort of records which are breakbeaty, you know, garagey records, you know, whatever. And you know, artwork who went on to be Magnetic Man was making those records. So I got him to do a mix of Lady Sovereign, and I got you know, Switch and Sinden and all that lot to do mixes. And yeah, you know, we bubbled up Lady Sovereign, and you know, she got on the cover of the NME, and then the Vultures kind of swept in and took her away from us. And
So
you know,
as an indie, there was just nothing. Was that just like a proper? That's it. She was gone, and you couldn't do anything
yeah, well,
about it. Yeah.
we ended up in court over that, you
Oh
know.
wow.
I
Oh
mean,
right.
ironically, you know, like I've been tried to sign all these grimy acts. The label that signed her and did a sort of deal behind my back was Island. You know, Island, the guy that didn't want to sign Dizzy Rascal signed. I think they thought, oh, you know, he found
Okay.
Dizzy
Yeah. Yeah.
Rascal. You know, we missed out on that. Now he's found Lady Sovereign. Let's get on her. And to be honest, you know, my mate who ran Republic Records, he ended up signing Lady Sovereign to Def Jam with Jay-Z. She was the first British hip hop act signed to Def Jam in America.
Yeah.
And you know, I was sort of ostracized from the whole project. The people that came into manager turned her against me and whatever else, you know, we never had a bad word, but they sort of, it all went off and went into this weird thing. But she was all set to have a #1 record in America with Missy Elliott. She was on a Verizon ad, and she had a few problems. She sort of, you know, they reckon she messed up this video shoot and stopped that happening. But yeah, she was, you know, I thought she was fascinating. You know, she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a girl, and I just remember like really kind of being at a sound check when she was playing at Cargo one night, and she just got on stage and started doing all these like Native American sort of hey yeah 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 hey, yeah. And I was just like, oh, and she was quite good on the mic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
And funny, wasn't she? It was like the
yeah,
lyrics were
cheeky,
interesting,
and
and
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. It was.
So,
Oh,
So how's that? So I guess I mean we've had a bit of experience with we had Moonshine had interest from majors and then it didn't work out. You know the deal wasn't for them and then we ended up carrying on doing them. So in a sense it worked out right. But we felt it was nice because you can't stop. You know when an artist is like oh, look, we've got an opportunity, you don't want to take that away. So we just said look we'll figure something out, but just go and do it. And then it didn't work out. And we ended up doing it. But I remember feeling quite you feel a bit down because you're like, oh, we've got to this point and we just really want it to carry on. Was that a big knock having that with something that you signed in? Because I guess at that point
yeah,
it was like what you want as an A&R, isn't it? You've got something you think is bubbling that can go up a
yeah.
notch. And
No,
how
it
did
was.
you feel?
Yeah, no, it was horrible because it was one of
Yeah,
those things where, you know, you sort of, you know, and again, you know, it's all these things where you see the sort of nasty side of the music business and it's gloves off. And when there's money and the people think it's going to go, it gets quite raw. And, you know, and I think realistically, you know, all you really want, or all I've really wanted for a long time is to sort of get an act and build them up and take them somewhere. And for a long time, that never happened. You know, I'd helped with the Sugar Babes. I'd helped with Amy Winehouse. I'd worked on all these other things, but they never really, you know, and having been in that major label world, you know, Spacek, you know, I thought underperformed. I thought Spacek had the potential to be another Portishead, but Steve didn't really sit there and write the greatest songs. He had some brilliant songs on that first album, and but it was they just got so into making beats and they weren't into the songs. And you know, and also I think Spacek, if they had come out now in the world we're in, would have been huge
yeah, yeah,
because you know the world of the internet and everything else, it would have connected. But at that back then, you had to get it on the radio to make it work, and it was very difficult to get something like Spacek on Radio One back then. Do you know what I mean? Other than Giles or whoever, you know, Spacek was a record that Giles could batter, but you weren't going to get Westwood playing it. You weren't going to get Trevor Nelson playing it. You know, where, you know, these records, but had this world, they could have easily been put in a playlist. They
yeah.
were so ahead of the curve.
They're still influential, isn't it? You got there was JD remixes of that. What they I saw
No,
that got reissued on a 7-inch, great artwork on the label. But I guess sometimes that's part of the process, isn't it? Is when you're doing the creative space of what you're doing, you are yeah, it's a little bit ahead, and you're trying something that maybe a new generation will discover
Yeah,
and be influenced by, isn't it?
yeah. I
So
mean,
it's all part of the story. Yeah,
again, I think that's why, you know, if you had your own label, you know, the fact that it was ahead of the curve, you know, you would reap the dividends down the line when everyone else caught up.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Um, and it was, yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I say, it's been a good ride. It's been brilliant. But at the same time, there's a load of things where you're just like, oh, you know, and I got to a point, you know, where I was just like, I'm never going to sort this out. I'm never going to have what I think I'm due. There was always some little thing which
yeah,
tripped you up and stopped you doing Dizzy Rascal, stopped you doing it. I mean, MIA did her first ever gig at my club. You know, I was in. Giles Peterson thought I was going out with MIA. I was like, no, I'm not. I just think she's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? You know, but it was, you know, it was you just get so close to these things and you don't get to do them, and it was really quite, you know, soul destroying. And you know, and then when we did Casual, you know, we found Lady Sovereign and then didn't get to do that because someone came in and poached her from it. So you're seeing it from another angle where you can't do it, you know. And then then I decided I'd got sick of Ireland because I took some other acting and I think everyone laughed at it when I played it in an A&R meeting, and I was just like, and then I went and worked for Domino. And so I went and got a job with Lawrence at Domino. And you know, the the Casual thing had sort of run its course. You know, we didn't really make any money out of it. We had a great journey doing the Country Got Soul thing, and then V2 wanted to sign the album that we made up, and they were on it, and then they didn't want to do it, and it was just, you know, you were just sort of going through, and it was just at every corner, and nothing sort of worked out, and nothing felt really comfortable, and it was all, I don't know, maybe it was me, I'm not sure what, but nothing really kind of came to fruition or got to the place where it could have, should have gotten. They either got away or something thwarted it. And then I went and worked for Domino, and I was like, you know what, this is going to be it. This is going to be, you know, they've just signed, they've got Franz Ferdinand, they've got all these left of centre things. It's going to be great. And you get in there, and it was great. And Lawrence is great. Um, and the whole company is really cool, you know. And I was like their sort of dancey sort of guy. They were much more indie, albeit with the electronics and whatnot. And you know, and I think the problem there was that they just didn't have the budget to sign loads of things. So whereas I was used to signing a lot of things, but there, you know, I wanted to sign Portico Quartet. I wanted to sign, I mean, you know, the main one, and I was completely on it early, was Vampire Weekend. You know, I found them. And there was a kid in the New York office. Every week I'd find a new band. It was when all those Brooklyn bands were coming through. Oh, you know, whatever his name was, I can't remember what his name was now. Call him up. Have you heard this record? Yeah. Yeah, they're my mates. Yeah, we drink in the same bar in, you know, like Williamsburg or whatever. And you'd be like, all right. You know, yeah, we're doing something with him already. I thought, oh God, Morgan, his name was. He's a good guy. And then one week I read about Vampire Weekend, and you know, got the tape of it, heard the music, and I was like, oh, Morgan, have you heard this Vampire Weekend thing? You know, but it sounded like a Paul Simon record or something, you know, African leaning, whatever. No, I don't know it. Oh my God, Ross, it's amazing. Oh, it's so good. You know, I was like, well, they're in Williamsburg, get on it. So he got on it, and to the point, he got so on it that they asked him to manage them at one point. But then Lawrence was like, I'm not really sure. I don't know, and then they went out to New York to see them, and the head of the New York office of Domino refused to go to the gig because he hated them. And then they came back, and Lawrence was like, I don't really think they're a Domino band. They're very preppy, and they're not really our sort of people. And I was just like, right, okay. So we're not going to do it, like, I really think you should do it. I think they're amazing. And I remember talking to the head of press, and she was like, look, Ross, it's not really your music, it's more our stuff. And and we just don't think. And I was like, yeah, but I don't like a lot of your indie stuff. And I was coming at it from the pop angle,
yeah,
and I think it's great. But whatever, it's up to you.
yeah.
So then you saw that one come and go, and you were like, we could have had that. Do you know what I mean? That, and that was huge. Another one that signed to XL was quite funny. I should have worked for XL. I'd have been laughing. But you know, and then I A&R'd a tricky album and got switched to produce it, and it was cool, and I was enjoying Domino. But then, you know, they had limited budget, and my contract came up for renewal, and they were like, look, we can't afford to pay you what we've signed you up for. We're gonna have to cut your wages. And I was like, you know what? I'll deal with this. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So I left. And then my mates had run, who were, you know, Darkus, who signed Amy Winehouse. He was then running Ireland, and so was Ted Cockle, who was a mate of mine. And you know, they were high off the success of Amy Winehouse and a few other things. And they were like, "Oh, come work for us. You know, we've got DJ Shadow. We want you to make the new Shadow record." So I went off and worked, was continued. I'd sort of, I say I worked there for 17 years. There was this period where I didn't work there, but they kept ringing me up and paying me a one-off basis to sort out remixes for all these different acts.
Yeah.
So I wasn't on the payroll, but I was in and out of doing
Yeah.
stuff when I was at Domino. And at the same time, I was working Ninja Tune, making cold cut records. And I signed that band, you know, that band, The Heavy.
Oh yeah. With a huge sync tune, isn't it?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
tune
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I signed them to Ninja Tune.
Oh, right, okay.
So we did that as well. And but it was, you know, and then I started making this DJ Shadow album. And we did that. That was great. You know, and I put African Boy on a track, and you know, there was so many things we just missed the target by a tiny amount. It just started to really do my head
Yeah,
in.
because the African Boy had a sample in it. Is that, and Shadow didn't? He wanted to clear it as a sample. He didn't want to rework it, so you couldn't
Exactly. Yeah,
release
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But the thing was that had started to get played on daytime
yeah,
Radio One.
yeah,
Everyone was just like, "Oh, wicked! Ross has done, you know, like, you know, Shadow, you know, like now Shadow's getting played on daytime Radio One." And then Josh was like, "No, I can't." And we ended. I've got a copy of the Shadow album with that track on it. It was a test pressing, and we had to record all of the, you know, we had to redo the lacquers. The record went back. You know, it was so, you know, it got to this point where everything was just a nightmare. Nothing, you know, when you got an in, and then it was like, oh no. I was like, Josh, just get someone to play that guitar part. No, I don't want to do it. No, it's got to be a sample. I've got to clear, you know, whatever. That's his thing. You know, I've got
yeah.
nothing respect for Shadow and loved all the time I worked with him. But, you know, we were on the edge of that record really been back in at Radio One. And then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then that record didn't happen. And then, you know, but by that point I'd found London Grammar, you know, as an A&R man, and I'd started to make, you know, hang out with them and try to find out what they really wanted to do. And then, you know, I went with Big Life. I was like, you know, like, I think this is going to turn into a thing. And I took him into Big Life with Jazz Summers, and we started working on it together, and we started to sort of build it up. And then Darkus called me up and he went, yeah, look, you know, we're not doing Shadow anymore. We've dropped him. So we haven't got any work for you. And at that point, I was just like, you know, what am I going to do? I'm like skint, you know, and it
So is
all
this the
kind of,
2010? I'm trying to figure out the dates on this.
I think it was like 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because, and you know, and that year was a really bad year for me. I wasn't really visible on the radio. I was doing stuff on Ministry and DJ gigs, wasn't doing loads of DJ gigs. And you know, the thing that saved, I was doing a few, you know, I was getting by. I think I was DJing at the Heavenly Social every Friday night. That was quite good fun. But I wasn't traveling around like I had been, because I wasn't that visible on the radio and didn't have the labels or whatever. And then I got asked to DJ on the Sade tour. So I was Sade's tour DJ at the end of the year. That saved me. There's always something that comes in and saves you when you think you're like done for. And that sort of got me through that. And then we came back and we finished the London Grammar record, or we signed London Grammar to Ministry. That put a bit of money in my pocket. Then we finished the London Grammar record, and then the London Grammar record just went off and did 3 million copies, you know. And
Oh, yeah, we did. Wow.
yeah, it was nuts, you know. So it's it's a roller coaster. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You never really know what's around the corner. And then we were doing that, and that was all going really well. And then London Grammar were just like, they fell out with Jazz Summers and the people at Big Life, and they were like that. We don't want you managing us anymore. And it was like, I know I was in Australia at the time, waiting for them to turn up on tour, and Big Life called me up and they went, "We've been sacked as managers," and I was like, right. And they went, "Have you had the call?" And I was like, "I haven't had a call." And they went, "Well, maybe they're keeping you on." But and then the boys in the band were like, "No, we're not sacking you. We want you, we want to keep working with you." But it never really worked out. But that London Grammar record, I made that with Jazz Summers, and Dipesh at Ministry was good, but we drilled down into the songs. And I think that's one of the things that I learned, and along the way, I think I'm probably better now at making records than I ever have been, because at first I was just into the beats. And then when I did the Country Got Soul thing and I hung out with Dan Penn and Tony Joe White and all of those guys, I really got into like the songs. I remember another A&R guy that was at Ireland back in the day. I had a band called Custom Blue that were a bit like Crosby, Stills and Nash. And I remember sort of talking to him. I was like, "What do you think of them?" And he went, "I haven't got any songs." And I was like, "What?" And because I was so into beats and vibes and just the stuff that, from a DJ point of view, you're into, I didn't really study the songs. And when I look back at that album now, as much as it feels nice, it hasn't got any songs. And I was like, that record wouldn't have got past me now like it did then, you know. Um, so with the London Grammar thing, I think I really got the song thing. I'd always had the sonic of records and what I wanted to sound like, and always being listening to, on the zeitgeist of, whether it was a Neptune or just listening to hip hop really keeps you on that edge of what the new sounds are. And I mean, I always listen to new black music, whatever it is, if whether I like it or not, I make myself listen to it. And you will always, there's always a good record in Jamaica. There's always a good record on the streets of London, whatever that may be. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't really that mad on a lot of UK garage, but then you'd find some mad little thing like, I remember I flew to the Miami Winter Music Conference, and all my drum and bass mates from vinyl were on the plane with MJ Cole. And they were and they were like, "Well, Ross, we've got you a white label, have this." And it was Sincere. So you get back from Miami and you're playing that, and it's like, this is a wicked UK garage record. This is a UK garage record for me. Do you know what I mean? And I just think, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing loads now. It's the whole way.
I remember you coming down to our club and playing that Rosie Gaines. There's a UK garage mix of that, and you coming down to the club we were doing and playing that.
Oh yeah,
And
I want.
yeah, and then that became a big anthem. Oh, I picked up a vinyl of it after hearing you play it, and it was huge at the club. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I think
yeah.
the DJ thing is always taps into sort of like, that's it's one of the reasons why I've done the radio show for nearly 30 years now, because, much as I was saying at the start of this, or probably off this call, that I was looking, I'm avidly looking for records every week to be, you want to play them before Benji, before Giles, before anyone. That's the vibe that I've always had with DJ. And it's like, because I know the power of listening to Giles and listening to Norman and listening to Trouble and listening to Westwood or Cold Cut or whoever or Weatherall or whatever it is, and those DJs playing those tunes, and you just being like, where'd that come from? And I think the the DJing and the A&R go together, because it's just like, you want that freshness, you're looking for those new sounds,
And having a regular radio show makes you want to find out what's going on, because
it's an integral part of,
I feel that way. Yeah,
the few times when I've not been on the radio,
yeah.
where I was between Ministry or My Soul or BBC London and Ministry or whatever, you lose that impetus to play, because if you're playing in clubs, you don't need to be playing brand new records. You can be off it a little bit. Whereas if you're on the radio, you need, you want to be playing records for your peers. Do you know what I mean?
I remember with Paul, my business partner, because I would take time off to do the radio during the week. I'd be going up to London to buy records in the early days, and he was like, we need to you to be at the label and do stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do my job unless I know what's going on with music and do the
Yeah.
radio. I need to take time to do the radio. And I was telling, is one of the stories I told him. I said, I remember when I was young, because I used to love listening to Jeff Young on Radio One, and then he left, and he said he's leaving to concentrate on A&R. And even I was a young kid thinking, oh, I want to be signing record. As a hope, a dream. I just was buying music, but I was thinking, why would you leave radio? Because you're going to get all the tunes up front if you're on Radio One. And then Pete Tong came in and did
Yeah.
Radio One, and it was like, later as I got older, I realised, that was so informing. I always thought Pete Tong was, he had stuff first, didn't he? Whether it's the hip hop or the house tunes, it was like almost the first time you'd hear those tunes would be him, and then he'd often sign them to FFRR, I guess, as well through that.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I think I mean that's what someone said to me. Where was I talking to someone the other day? They were like, oh no, I was talking to Kwame Kwarten, who was in The Influence, who is now big manager Lauren Vula and Hack Baker and Blue Lab Beats, his sons, or one of his sons. And he was saying to me, like he got signed to East West in America by Sylvia Rhone because Mickey D in Black Market had the white label, and he was talking to Sylvia and was just like, you want to check this thing out, was sending her records, and in the pile in their A&R meeting with Merlin Bob and Sylvia Rhone is the good woman who signed Missy Elliott, and a whole host, En Vogue, a whole host of other things. They were just like, what is this? I'm the one, The Influence. And he was like, people who work in record shops are the A&R guys, and Mickey D went on to be an A&R guy and signed a load of good stuff and whatnot. But it's record shops, it's DJs, it's that clamor into things. I don't know how the indie world works, the guitar-y rock band side of things, but the world that we've operated in, that I've always been in, black music, left of center black music, whatever you want to call it, it's just that thing of like, you're just looking for it like crazy. Do you know what I mean?
And I think the other thing is when you're talking about when there's a buzz about something, because I think that's one of the things when you're doing a club and you play a record and no one's heard this tune before, and then there's a massive reaction to it, then you suddenly know. Because I remember with some of when we were about talking to Zeb Bias about signing him, and he gave us the Omar dancing, and I remember playing that out for the first time, the club going nuts to it, and it was like, okay, this is like, it's big, and that really does inform, because to me that means, look, well, people are just going to like this record, and if you don't need radio or super pluggers on this, the DJs will like it. I guess that's often away from London Grammar, a world that we had been in and understand and know, don't we? So,
no, totally. No, I mean, I think it's those, and it's I remember playing stuff on the radio. It's that instantaneous reaction when on BBC London, the message board lights up when you play. I remember playing Soldissimo, and all the phone lines just went red, and you were like, wow, okay, like and obviously now on NTS, the chat room, you play stuff, boom, when I played the first time I played Foremost Poets, Flowers in the Attic, they're like, what is that? Or when I played, some of the Bruise stuff or whatever, people immediately, or Lady Blackbird, I came back from a trip in LA and I'd met Chris Seafried, and he played me, I can't remember what it was. What's the name of the track? I can't remember now, you have to forgive me, but it was the first Lady Blackbird track that I thought was good, and I played it on the radio. I knew she had a ridiculous voice, but there were people even go, what's that tune? And you're just like, someone can be bothered to email in on a message chat room about a track. There's something there. Do you know what I mean? And it works in so many ways. It disciplines you to check the music out, and really you are looking for a needle in a haystack. I was talking to someone at Ministry yesterday, and they were like that. How come you've always found stuff? Like, you've always found really cool records, And then as soon as I left the meeting, I was just like that, headphones on, listening to my January monthly playlist, and like, no, yeah, no, maybe, bum, 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 bum. And I was just like, because I don't stop. I don't stop listening to music. And, and I've got a good ear, and I know a good tune, whether you're signing it or playing it, you can hear good music. Do you know what I mean? I think you know him, Monk One in New York. When I was
Yeah,
living,
yeah, yeah.
I went round to see Andrew Monk One, and he turned around and he played me the first Salt EP, and it would, it's got more of like a ESG type of vibe to it, and I was like, I thought they were a New York band. I was like, where are they from? This is amazing. What is it? Like, I need to find them, and he was like, well, I don't really know too much information about it. I was like, is it on record? Have you got a, and it obviously wasn't. It was just a digital file that he had. I don't know where he got it from, but he had it. And then when I came back to England and I found out they were from England, I was a bit disappointed. I thought I'd stumbled across like a sort of some kids from Brooklyn. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not saying I knew what Salt were going to become, but just through hearing it, it was like I was on it straight away. You're just like, bang, that tune is me. And then I remember they did the second EP, and I was a bit like, it's a bit more R&B now. I thought it was going to be a post-punky, funky, liquid type of vibe. But then I was like, oh, actually, it's quite good. But your ears, I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
whether that manifests itself in signing some huge hit record, or it's just you just play good records on the radio or in clubs.
There's some. I guess. Look, we might be coming to it. Might be winding it down a bit to try and do something. So I guess where we were, where we were. I still want to try and get the full story. So after London Grammar, is that foundation starting soon after that, or where is there another gap between?
No, it's interesting after London Grammar, because I sort of, I mean, by that point I was, I had, I'd kind of come out of this low, I'd made some money. When you get a big band like that, you do make quite decent money, and then we had, as managers, you have a post-term commission, so money was coming in. I went back to Ireland and tried some stuff there, didn't really work. I made the Jeb Loy Nichols record. Jeb is a constant throughout my, Jeb is someone I found through the Underwolves, who was brilliant, who is a close mate of mine. We ended up signing Jeb to Decca. We made a record with him. Then we made another record with him. Me and Andrew Hale from Sade made a record with him. And I ended up losing quite a lot of money on that. I lost about 30 grand or something on that record, because we just never really worked, but I sort of tried a load of things. And I think it was interesting, actually, because I think I was like, I just want another London Grammar. I liked it. I'd been in the trenches all my life, finding these things that were cool but never really worked, and not, and then once you get a big act, you sort of, I use the trench kind of thing because you're sort of down in it, and then you come up above and you're in this other world, and you're like, oh wow, there's money here, and there's mad connects, and there's all this, and you're on a next level, and you're going to New York, and you're going to LA, and you're going to Australia, and you're doing all these things, and everyone's loving your band, and it's all flying, and you're like, it's a buzz. Do you know what I mean? You're winning awards, and it's all like, I should have been doing this years ago. For a long time before London Grammar, I was like, I've won, I've had Grammy nominated things. I've won the Mercury Music Prize. I've done, had #1 records. What I wanted was to have a band that you found from nothing, that you took to something. And that had eluded me all of those years. And I really wanted that. And then I think I sort of came out of that and was a bit like, in this new world order where streaming had just started happening, and and you're like, yeah, well, I want hit records, I want big records, I want to find another act that I can. And I think really for the last 8 years or so, that's what I've been looking for, and it's been really difficult to find it. And then Lady Blackbird came along, and I was just like, you know what, I just want to make a record that I love. And we didn't have a lot of money. We'd been given some money by Max Lusada to set Foundation up. And I was just like, she's great. I'd worked with the producer, and I was just like, I don't want any drums on the record. I just want it to be this sort of chilled thing. And yeah, and then that sort of that sort of took off. But yeah, I sort of find myself in this position now where, I'd found, and also, it's between label and management. You know, I think the management is really important. I think the label is great to put stuff out. I mean, I was managing that guy KDA for a long time. I managed Greg Folk for a little while recently. Couldn't really get anything to work with him, although I had a really good vision for what he wanted to do, and I think he's brilliant. But it just didn't seem to work out. And you know, and then this guy Zach Witness, who produced the last Erica
Oh yeah,
Badu,
yeah.
managing him, and we're gradually after like 4 or 5 years, sort of getting him in a position where, you know, we've just cut some tracks with that rapper Doechii from LA. You know, Zach has done tracks with Frank Ocean and Nile Rodgers and Andre 3000. And, you know, he's amazing. He's like the most talented person I've met since Switch. And I think he's probably more talented than Switch, as much as I love Switch. Switch has got a rawness about him, but Zach has got mad skills as a player. He's got that hip hop housey sensibility about him. We've signed him to Defected. Touch wood, he's going to be one that will kind of really blossom. He should do. He's an amazing character. But I think, yeah, I think I lost my way a little bit. And then when we did Foundation, it brought me right back down to like, you know what? Just make records that you love, put them out and see what happens. Do you know what I mean?
Which
And
worked
that's
out.
that. It's worked out. I
But
mean,
all that experience, isn't it? It's almost everything you've done has contributed to that, maybe at that
yeah,
point.
totally,
Yeah,
100%,
yeah.
100%. You know, like, you know, that bit I said about the songwriting thing was so important for me to understand what great songs are and to talk to people like Dan Penn and, you know, who's written songs for, you know, Aretha Franklin and loads of people, and Tony Joe White, who's written songs for Gladys Knight, and you know, people who've written Breakfast in Bed for Dusty, you know, hanging out of all that lot in Nashville and getting that countryside of things. It was key to me to go, yeah, now I know what a good song is. I've always known what a good beat is, what a fresh beat is from all the shared work we've had of DJing and whatnot. And I've always been, you know, having that breadth of, you know, hearing new sounds and being not afraid to play them early and everything else. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's, yeah, I all I need to do now is just keep finding the right people, and then I can go do this, and do that, you know.
I think one of the things I found interesting what you said is about being a manager. You're almost are doing an A&R role because you are developing, and almost what you were saying with that witness as well. You are. I've chatted to you a little while ago. I remember when you were first talking about him, and I can see you know you've been patient, but there's almost an A&R role in all of these things that you
Yeah,
as a manager, which is an interesting. I'd never thought of that, but that is true with somebody like you. You're not just what are the numbers on this deal. It is really what's the sound and what you're trying to achieve and where are you going to go, isn't it? It's really
yeah. You know, I mean, if I had a choice, I think I would like to be an A&R person at Island Records and have Chris Blackwell backing me, and me just to be able to ponce about and, you know, go, yeah, let's sign this thing and let's sign this thing and do this. But the world changes and the world isn't like that. And you know, I mean, I am good at doing, you know, doing the deals. I've learned that business side of it. You know, I know you know, I know all those sort of skills now about, I wasn't bothered about it when I was in my 20s and 30s. I was having a good time and I was DJing everywhere and hanging out and, you know, doing the radio, and it was all good. But you know, at the sort of the things that make it leaner and put you under the pressures, and you know, you're like, well, I need to do a really good deal because I need to get money off the top of it, and you know, but the A&R side is always integral to it. Do you know what I mean? You know, and yeah, like you say, it all comes together to hopefully make you the better person, and hopefully the biggest thing that I've ever done is going to happen,
yeah.
you know,
You're
soon.
still hungry in a way. I think
Soon.
that's yeah. I mean, I've
Happen soon.
yeah. I think it's always. I think even if you do the biggest thing, you want to do the next thing, and the next thing the big thing might be doing something madly creative that's nuts that doesn't sell low. So, but I think I feel you know, for you, as I said, when I was going through my records before we did this, and when when I was sorting out my records, like you've been involved in so many brilliant, interesting records. And there's, you know, look, I don't really know the world of London Grammar and Vampire Weekend and all of that, but there's quite a varied amount of styles of things that you know you consistently been there. And as I said, like I still remember hearing Rosie Gaines' "I Want You," I think it was the Bump and Flex mix, and you know you playing "Follow Me," Red Astaire, like you know those like
Yeah.
big tunes. So
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand. Do you know what I mean? It's that thing of at the end of the day, you know, I was talking to Kwame about it the other day when he was on my show, and I was just like, I remember when I was at school and I bought a 7-inch of The Message, or you'd go in your school lunch hour and you'd buy Gwen Guthrie and Nothing Going On But the Rent, and come back and go, this record, yeah, you're going to be into this, or walking into City Sounds and then playing Public Enemy #1 and just being like, oh my God, that to me, that is at the bottom of it all. That is the thing, that is, if you've got that ear to hear that the next thing, you're in a good spot. And now you can either be too early, you can either hear it too late, you can either find it and not be able to work with it, you can find it and the person's a nightmare, all these different incarnations that stop it happening. And then all of a sudden you get a zhunk and you get an alignment of the planets and it just goes doo, 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 doo. And you're like, and it happens and you're just like, wow, okay. And I think, you're right, probably London Grammar isn't a Rob Louis record. Do you know what I mean? 100%. But, to me, London Grammar were like, I didn't get to do 07. So it works in that regard, in a different way. And I always come back to this scene that we've been part of, because I think it is a really exciting and brilliant place. And, hats off to Giles and people like that have sort of nurtured and created it. And there's a lot of other people around it that have, what Ninja Tune are doing, as much as I wasn't slagging them off when I said about the Trevor Whatever record, but, this beautiful, brilliant British world of music that it draws from everywhere and isn't so pigeonholed as it is in America. And, and the fact that, I mean, even like, this new school jazz thing, with the fact that they're all checking grime records. And it's really, at the end of the day, what we're all about is about this brilliant multiculturalism that is the UK. Do you know what I mean? To me, it's like, it buzzes me. It buzzes me when I see everyone getting on. I hate it when I look in America and it's so polarized. And, and I just think that, we've, not only is it the cultural thing, it's also the historical element that we have in this country, where we look back and, everything in America, they're like that. Well, it's gone now. I'm into that. I'm into the next thing. Whereas here, we're all like, oh yeah, remember that from, the way that everyone of recent years has been checking Lovers Rock and has been checking the Street Soul records. And do you know what I mean? There's always some little revival, someone going somewhere, the African things, the whatever, it's such a sort of fertile environment that people were in it before us, that we've carried forward, that now, shows on NTS are playing and other people are doing. And do you know what I mean? I just think I love it. I love what it's all about, and I love what it throws up, and I love the fusions and the freshness that this country enables. Do you know what I mean? I think we're lucky in that regard.
Definitely. And we're always passionate about the history of where things have come from as well. I think we always dig into that side of things. We sort of know genre doesn't appear out of nowhere, and there's always people trying to figure out all the connections, aren't they? I guess, look, maybe beginning to just sort of wind it down. From a point of view, if someone's listening to this now, and whether they've got an A&R job somewhere at an indie or at a major, or looking to try and get into there, what advice do you think you would give to somebody in that world and where it stands now? I know you've gone through, you've done it from the 90s up until now, but I feel, I'd say probably the biggest thing, which is, I think that I always say, you just got to be passionate about music. But are there things that you've learned or lessons that you've learned that you think is worth saying to people now, working with artists, or is it too much?
I suppose, I mean, I think it depends where you're doing it from. But if you're in it like sort of, the way that we're in it, which is where I can speak, there's people that are just on a smash and grab, and, there's A&R people that are sort of, the much maligned sort of A&R characters often do very well. I think one of the things that I always felt at a major label level was that, you always talk about drug dealers and you're like, don't get high on your own supply. I've spent all my life getting, if my music is a drug, I've spent all my life getting high on my own supply. And sometimes I think, I could be colder and more distanced from it and more opportunist. But if I'm really genuinely being honest about it, I've had a brilliant time, and the trials, you know, and it's not over yet. So, you know, if you love music and you're into doing A&R, then I just think you got to do whatever you can to make things work. You know, it's a tricky path. It's a tricky path. I think, you know, it's difficult to really say what any particular lessons other than keep looking.
Yeah.
You know, keep looking, and if you love it enough and you dig enough, and you know, and you under, I mean, look, you know, one lesson I would say to everyone, you know, and again, everyone's like, what's a hit record? But if you're making records, and this is what, you know, it's like you need, to me, across all genres, a hit record is a great song, a great performance, and a great production. And the production either makes you yesterday, tomorrow, or today. The performance and the song, you know, the song is the constant in it. You know, vocal fashions come in and out of style, but that's kind of into the production. But those three elements, if you've got those three elements, you know, you're onto a good thing.
Okay, excellent. Oh, that's brilliant, Ross. I think that's really good. Is there anything else you want to add or say or
No,
miss
no,
out?
I don't know really. I mean, no, that's probably quite a good thing to end it on, because I think that, you know, at the core of it, there's, you know, this business is built on songs. You know, it's, you know, and a song can be an instrumental, but it needs to have, you know, I remember I was lecturing at some college once, and it was with Luke from Graham, and he turned around, and he was very much in the art school, like, yeah, be abstract and freeform and whatever. And I was like, no, 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 no. You know, what I've learned is you need good songs. What you remember, whether it's Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs, whether it's 138 Trek or whatever, you can apply a structure to the tune, and, you know, and those three elements that I talk about are, you know, are integral to great records. And really, as an A&R person, you're trying to make great records. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make great records. I'd like to add to the culture, you know, whatever. I'd like to make a shed load of money out of it, and I haven't done badly. But I think realistically, that's, you know, you know, this is a vocation. This is a passion. I'm lucky enough to have been getting paid for it for the last God knows how many years. Do you know what I mean? You know, but you know, I now know how to make great records, and those boxes need ticking.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's amazing. So you've been really fascinating speaking to you, Ross. Thank you for this
Pleasure,
as well.
man.
So yeah,
Pleasure,
so
pleasure.
I guess we'll mention what you do. You know, check out the NTS show. That's every
Yeah,
Thursday, isn't it?
yeah. Every Thursday, 11 until 1. NTS Channel 1, part Soup to Nuts.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Because then you can hear what I'm playing and what that's all about. I mean, Instagram, Ross Allen Music, Facebook, everything I do on Instagram goes up there. I'm not brilliant on the socials, but, you know, yeah, you know, if there's new music that I've got coming out, you will see it on there. If there's gigs I'm doing, you'll see them on there. And the radio show really is the sort of the route into what I'm all about. And then obviously there's Foundation, the record label, you know. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
doing that. We've got a band, Cooper T. We've got the Earth Angel album, which is Parrot doing a street soul project. We've got Foremost Poets. We've got this. Yeah, there's a whole load of things we're going to sign.
Brilliant. I love the Earth Angel. I bought that vinyl, the
Yes,
white label picker. Yeah, that's real good. And your show's brilliant. You always put me onto stuff. I'm listening to it. I hadn't picked up on that Cohen track, the percussive one. There was another tune I picked up on your best of show as well recently that I'd missed out on as well. So I'm
yeah,
always checking your shows. So yeah, thank
nice,
you.
nice one. Cheers, Rob. Cool, cool.